The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clanged against the concrete floor of my garage. Midnight in Cedar Bluff, and here I was, elbow deep in the guts of my '98 Ford, trying to coax another year out of the transmission. The house behind me buzzed with muffled voices, my wife Leah and our 16-year-old daughter Madison having another one of their late-night heart-to-hearts. I wiped my hands on an oil-stained rag and reached for my phone when it buzzed. A text from Leah. Extending my girl's trip by a week. Don't wait up. I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. 3 days she'd been gone to Chicago with her college girlfriends. 3 days of blessed silence in our split-level house that felt more like a funeral home than a family residence these days. Take your time, I typed back. My attorney finds these stories fascinating. The response came faster than a NASCAR pit stop. My phone rang immediately. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Leah's voice crackled through the speaker, sharp enough to cut glass. Just what it sounds like, sweetheart. Enjoy your extended vacation. Tom, you're being ridiculous. It's just a few more days with the girls. We're having such a good time and… Save it. I hung up and tossed the phone onto my workbench. Through the kitchen window, I could see Madison pacing back and forth, her phone pressed to her ear, probably calling Mommy to report Daddy's latest transgression. The kid had turned into Leah's personal spy over the past year, feeding her information about my comings and goings like some teenage intelligence operative. I grabbed a beer from the mini-fridge I'd installed in the garage, my sanctuary from the Cold War that had become my marriage. The bottle was ice-cold against my palm as I twisted off the cap and took a long pull. Cedar Bluff stretched out beyond my driveway, a town that had seen better decades. The streetlights cast yellow pools on cracked asphalt, and most of the houses showed their age like old men who'd given up pretending they weren't tired. I'd built my construction business here from nothing, starting with a pickup truck and a toolbox. Now I employed 12 guys and had more work than I could handle. But somehow, that wasn't enough for Leah anymore. She'd gotten her paralegal certification 5 years ago, then her law degree 2 years back. Suddenly, my calloused hands and blue-collar wisdom weren't sophisticated enough for her new crowd of courthouse cronies and wine-tasting socialites. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Leah. We need to talk when I get home. Looking forward to it, I replied. The front door slammed and Madison's voice carried across the yard. Dad's being a total jerk again. I finished my beer and grabbed another. Tomorrow I'd start asking the right questions. Tonight, I'd drink to the end of whatever illusion I'd been clinging to about my marriage. The garage felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were closing in. I'd spent 22 years with Leah, built a life, raised a daughter, created something I thought was solid, but sitting there in the dim light of a single bulb, surrounded by tools and engine parts, I realized I'd been fixing everything except what mattered most, and maybe it was too late to fix that anyway. The next morning hit me like a sledgehammer to the skull. I'd finished half a six-pack in the garage before dragging myself inside at 2 a.m. Leah's side of the bed remained untouched, her pillow still perfectly fluffed like a hotel display. Madison had already left for school by the time I stumbled to the kitchen, leaving behind a sink full of dishes and a note. Dad, Mom says you're acting weird. Maybe see someone about your anger issues. M. Anger issues. Right. 22 years of marriage, and now I had anger issues because I questioned my wife's sudden need for extended girls' trips. I poured coffee that could strip paint and fired up my laptop at the kitchen table. Time to do some detective work. Our joint checking account showed 3 withdrawals I didn't remember making. $300 from an ATM in downtown Cedar Bluff, $150 at some place called Riverside Inn, and another $200 cash withdrawal from last Tuesday. Leah had left for Chicago on Thursday. The Riverside Inn turned out to be a motel on the outskirts of town, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask too many questions. I'd driven past it 1,000 times without giving it a second thought. My phone rang. Ray Kowalski, my business partner and the closest thing I had to a best friend. "Tommy, you sound like hammered garbage. Late night?" "Something like that." "Listen, Ray, I need a favor. Can you handle the Morrison job today? I've got some personal business to take care of." "Everything okay with Leah?" Ray had always been perceptive. We'd started the business together 12 years ago, building it from a two-man operation into something respectable. He knew me well enough to read between the lines. "That's what I'm trying to figure out." "Say no more. I'll handle Morrison. You do what you need to do." After hanging up, I scrolled through Leah's social media. Her Facebook showed photos from Chicago, drinks with her college roommate Jessica, shopping on Michigan Avenue, dinner at some trendy restaurant. All perfectly normal, except for one detail that made my stomach clench. In the background of one photo, barely visible, was a man I recognized. Eli Patterson, Leah's work friend from the law office. Dark hair, expensive suit, the kind of smile that sold used cars and broken promises. Eli Patterson, who was supposed to be in Cedar Bluff handling cases while Leah enjoyed her girls' weekend. I grabbed my truck keys and headed for the Riverside Inn. The desk clerk was a thin woman with tired eyes and cigarette-stained fingers. She looked up from her magazine when I walked in, sizing me up like I might be trouble. "Help you?" "I'm looking for information about a guest. My wife might have stayed here recently." "We don't give out guest information." I pulled out my wallet and placed a $50 bill on the counter. "She's about 5'6", blonde hair, drives a silver Honda Accord. Would have been here Tuesday night, maybe with a man." The woman glanced at the money, then at me. "Room 12, registered under Patterson, paid cash for 3 hours." The world tilted sideways. I gripped the counter to steady myself. "You sure?" "Mister, I see a lot of things in this job. Your wife and that lawyer fellow have been coming here once a week for about 2 months. Same room, same routine. I'm sorry." I left the 50 on the counter and walked back to my truck on unsteady legs. The parking lot felt like it was spinning, and I had to sit in the driver's seat for 5 minutes before I trusted myself to drive. 2 months. They'd been carrying on right under my nose for 2 months while I worked 60-hour weeks to keep our family comfortable. While I coached Madison's softball team and fixed the leaky faucet in the master bathroom and pretended everything was fine. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "Mom says you're checking up on her. That's creepy, Dad." So Leah was feeding our daughter information, turning her against me. Perfect. I drove home and went straight to Leah's home office, a converted bedroom where she kept her law books and case files. Her computer was password protected, but I knew her well enough to crack it on the 3rd try. Madison's birthday followed by our wedding anniversary. Her email told the whole story. Months of messages between her and Eli, starting professional and gradually becoming personal, then intimate. Plans for secret meetings. Complaints about her boring husband who doesn't understand her ambitions. One message made me see red. "Tom's so predictable. He thinks working with his hands makes him some kind of man, but he has no vision, no sophistication. I need someone who challenges me intellectually." I printed everything. Every email, every text screenshot she'd saved, every piece of evidence of their affair. The printer hummed and churned, spitting out page after page of betrayal. When I finished, I had a stack of papers 3 inches thick, enough ammunition to destroy both their careers and reputations in our small town where gossip traveled faster than wildfire. But I wasn't ready to pull that trigger yet. First, I wanted to see how far they'd take their lies. My phone rang again. Leah's number. "Hi, honey," I answered, my voice steady as concrete. "How's Chicago?" "Tom, we need to talk about this morning. You can't just accuse me of things without any reason." Leah's voice carried that lawyer tone she'd perfected over the past 2 years, the one that made me feel like I was being cross-examined in my own kitchen. Accuse you of what, exactly? I just said my attorney would find your stories interesting. That could mean anything. Don't play games with me. I know what you were implying. I leaned back in my desk chair, surrounded by the evidence of her betrayal, and almost laughed. Games? I'm not the one playing games here, sweetheart. What's that supposed to mean? It means have fun in Chicago with Jessica. Tell her I said hello. Silence stretched between us like a taut wire. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out how much I knew. I'll be home Sunday night, she finally said. We'll talk then. Looking forward to it. After she hung up, I called Rudy Martinez, my old boxing coach. At 65, Rudy had seen everything Cedar Bluff had to offer, and his gym had been my refuge during the worst patches of my marriage. Tommy, haven't seen you in a week. Getting soft on me? Need to blow off some steam tonight if you're open. Always open for you, kid. 7 o'clock. I'll be there. Rudy's gym occupied the basement of an old brick building downtown, all exposed pipes and hanging heavy bags. The smell of leather and sweat hit me as I descended the stairs, carrying my gear bag. You look like someone pissed in your cornflakes, Rudy said, wrapping my hands with practiced efficiency. Woman trouble? Is there any other kind? Fair point. You want to talk about it or just hit things? Hitting things sounds good. For 45 minutes, I pounded the heavy bag until my shoulders burned and sweat poured down my face. Every punch carried months of frustration, every combination a release of pressure I'd been holding inside. Better? Rudy asked as I unwrapped my hands. Getting there. You know, Tommy, I've been married to the same woman for 42 years. Want to know the secret? What's that? Never let anyone disrespect you in your own house. The moment you do, it's over. His words hit harder than any punch I'd thrown. What if it's already over? Then you decide how it ends. You can go out like a victim, or you can go out like a man who knows his worth. I drove home through Cedar Bluff's empty streets, past the closed shops and flickering neon signs. The town felt different now, like I was seeing it through new eyes. Every corner held memories of my life with Leah. But those memories felt contaminated now, poisoned by her betrayal. Madison was in the living room when I walked in, sprawled on the couch with her phone in hand. Dad, you look gross, and you smell like a gym. Thanks for the pep talk, kiddo. How was school? Fine. Mom called. She says you're being paranoid about her trip. I sat down in my recliner, studying my daughter's face. She had Leah's eyes and my stubborn chin, but lately she looked at me like I was some kind of disappointment. What else did Mom say? That you've been checking up on her, going through her stuff. She says it's because you're insecure about her success. The manipulation was breathtaking. Leah was already laying the groundwork, turning our daughter into an ally before the war even started. Madison, has your mom ever talked to you about her work friend Eli? Something flickered across her face, a moment of recognition quickly suppressed. Why would she? I don't care about her boring work friends. But I'd seen it. Madison knew something. Just curious. She mentions him sometimes. I'm going to my room. She stood abruptly, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Madison? She paused at the bottom of the stairs. I love you, kiddo. No matter what happens, remember that. Her expression softened for just a moment. I know, Dad. I love you too. After she disappeared upstairs, I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by the remnants of our family life. Photo albums on the coffee table, Madison's softball trophies on the mantel, Leah's law degree hanging on the wall like a monument to her ambition. I'd built this life with my own hands, brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck. Now it was crumbling around me, and I was supposed to just accept it gracefully. But Rudy was right. I got to decide how this ended. and I was done being the victim. Saturday morning brought rain that matched my mood, steady, gray, and relentless. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and the printed emails, reading through them again to make sure I hadn't missed any details. The picture they painted was worse than I'd initially thought. Leah and Eli hadn't just been having an affair, they'd been planning a future together. References to when we're both free and starting fresh somewhere new peppered their correspondence like poison in a well. My phone buzzed. A text from Cassie Williams, Leah's best friend since college. "Hey Tom, Leah told me you've been worried about her. She's fine, just needed some girl time. Don't be such a worrier." Cassie had never texted me before, not once in the 15 years I'd known her. The fact that she was reaching out now meant Leah had coached her, probably given her talking points to help sell the lie. I texted back, "Thanks for checking in, just want to make sure she's safe." "Of course, we're taking good care of her. Lots of shopping and margaritas." Except Leah was supposed to be with Jessica in Chicago, not with Cassie. The web of lies was getting tangled, and they weren't keeping their stories straight. I decided to test the waters. I called Jessica directly. I still had her number from Madison's birthday party 2 years ago. "Tom, how are you? It's been forever." "Hey, Jess, I hope you and Leah are having a great time in Chicago." Silence. Then, "Chicago? Tom, I'm in Denver visiting my sister. I haven't seen Leah in months." "My mistake. Must have gotten my wires crossed. Leah mentioned she was traveling with college friends, and I assumed, no, definitely not me. Maybe she meant someone else from state?" "Probably." "Well, I'll let you get back to your sister. Take care." I hung up and stared at the phone. Leah wasn't in Chicago with Jessica. She wasn't with Cassie either, despite Cassie's text. So where was she? The answer came to me like a punch to the gut. She was probably holed up in some hotel with Eli, playing house while I sat at home like a fool. My phone rang. Ray. "Tommy, I hate to bother you on Saturday, but we've got a problem with the Morrison job. The client wants to make some changes, and I need your input." "What kind of changes?" "Major ones. Wants to add a second bathroom and expand the kitchen. Could push the timeline back 3 weeks." I rubbed my temples. "Set up a meeting for Monday morning. We'll figure it out then." "You sure you're okay? You sound like you're carrying the weight of the world." "Just some personal stuff. I'll work through it." "You know I'm here if you need to talk, right?" Ray had been divorced twice. He understood the particular agony of watching a marriage disintegrate. "I know. Thanks, buddy." After hanging up, I made a decision. I needed more information, and I knew exactly where to get it. Eli Patterson lived in the apartment complex on the east side of town, the kind of place that catered to young professionals who wanted amenities but couldn't afford houses yet. I'd driven past it countless times on my way to job sites. I parked across the street and waited. If Eli was really in Chicago with Leah, his car wouldn't be here. If he was lying about his whereabouts like she was lying about hers, I'd have my answer. His black BMW sat in its assigned parking space, covered with a thin layer of dust that suggested it hadn't moved in days. So much for Chicago. I walked up to the building's entrance and checked the mailboxes. E. Patterson, Unit 3B. His mailbox was stuffed full, newspapers, bills, junk mail. Nobody had collected it in at least 3 days. A young woman emerged from the elevator, heading for the door. I smiled and held it open for her. "Thanks," she said. "You visiting someone?" "Eli Patterson, friend from work." "Oh, Eli's great. Haven't seen him around lately, though. I think he's out of town." "Yeah, he mentioned a trip." "Thanks." I took the elevator to the 3rd floor and found Unit 3B. The hallway was quiet, carpeted in industrial gray that muffled my footsteps. I pressed my ear to Eli's door and heard nothing. On impulse, I tried the doorknob. Locked, of course. But the window at the end of the hall offered a view of the parking lot, and more importantly, a view of Eli's balcony. His sliding door was slightly open, and a small pile of newspapers sat on his patio table. I went back downstairs and around to the side of the building. Eli's ground-floor neighbor had left a ladder leaning against their patio wall, probably for some maintenance project. 5 minutes later, I was standing on Eli's balcony, looking through his sliding door into an empty apartment. The place was neat, expensive-looking, and completely deserted. No luggage, no signs of recent activity. I slid the door open and stepped inside. The apartment told a story. Expensive furniture, law books on built-in shelves, framed diplomas on the walls. But what caught my attention was the kitchen counter, where 2 coffee cups sat unwashed in the sink. One had lipstick on the rim, a shade I recognized because I'd bought it for Leah last Christmas. They'd been here together, probably planning their next move while I worked late on the Henderson renovation. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of everything: the coffee cups, the apartment layout, the expensive electronics that Eli probably couldn't afford on a junior associate's salary. Then I noticed something else: a small desk in the corner with papers scattered across it. Legal documents. Divorce papers, to be specific. Not filed yet, but prepared. Leah's name was on them as the petitioner, citing irreconcilable differences and requesting spousal support. My hands shook as I photographed the papers. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. The affair wasn't just about romance, it was about exit strategy. I left everything exactly as I'd found it and climbed back down the ladder. The rain had intensified, soaking through my jacket as I walked back to my truck. Sitting in the driver's seat, watching water streak down the windshield, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, sharp and constant, but it was being joined by something else. Anger. Cold, calculating anger that settled in my chest like ice. They thought they were so smart, so sophisticated. They thought the blue-collar husband would just roll over and take whatever they decided to dish out. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Sunday evening arrived like a storm front, heavy with the promise of confrontation. I'd spent the day preparing, organizing evidence, making phone calls, and setting pieces on a chessboard Leah didn't even know existed yet. She walked through the front door at 8:30, dragging her suitcase and wearing the smile she reserved for difficult clients and tax auditors. "Hi, honey. I'm home." Madison appeared at the top of the stairs like she'd been waiting for this moment. "Mom, how was Chicago?" "Wonderful, sweetheart. Jessica sends her love." I stayed in my recliner, remote control in hand, watching them perform their reunion. Leah looked good, rested, glowing even. Amazing what a few days of adultery could do for a woman's complexion. "Tom, aren't you going to say hello?" I muted the television and turned to face her. "Welcome home. How was your extended girls' trip?" Something in my tone made her pause. Madison, sensing tension, retreated to her room with mumbled excuses about homework. "It was good. Relaxing. I needed the break." "I'm sure you did. Chicago's a great town for breaks." Leah set down her purse and studied my face. 22 years of marriage had taught her to read my moods, and right now, I wasn't bothering to hide anything. "Tom, what's going on? You've been acting strange all week." "Strange how?" "Suspicious, accusatory, making comments about attorneys and checking up on me." I stood up and walked to the kitchen, forcing her to follow. On the counter, I'd arranged a small display, printed emails, photographs from Eli's apartment, and a copy of the divorce papers she'd prepared. Her face went pale. "We need to talk," I said. "Tom, I can explain." "Can you? Because I'm really curious how you're going to explain this." I picked up one of the printed emails and read aloud. "Tom's so predictable. He thinks working with his hands makes him some kind of man, but he has no vision, no sophistication. I need someone who challenges me intellectually." She sank into a kitchen chair like her strings had been cut. "How did you—" "Your password was easy to crack. Madison's birthday and our anniversary. Though I guess our anniversary doesn't mean much to you anymore. Tom, please. It's not what you think. It's not? Because it looks like you've been screwing your coworker for 2 months while planning to divorce me and take half of everything I've built. The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire. Leah's composure cracked, and for the first time in years, I saw the woman I'd married, vulnerable, caught, human. I never meant for it to happen this way. Which part? The affair or getting caught? Tom, our marriage has been over for years. We both know it. We're just going through the motions. So you decided to start going through the motions with Eli instead. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. He understands me, my ambitions, my dreams. He sees me as more than just a wife and mother. And I don't? You see me as the woman who makes your dinner and raises your daughter and looks good at company parties? When was the last time you asked me about my cases, my goals, my hopes for the future? Her words stung because they carried a grain of truth. I'd gotten comfortable, complacent, but that didn't excuse what she'd done. So, instead of talking to me about it, you decided to have an affair and plan a divorce behind my back. I was going to tell you, after I figured out how to handle everything. Handle everything? You mean how to screw me over in the divorce settlement? She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Tom, I don't want to hurt you, but I can't live like this anymore. I can't pretend to be happy in a marriage that stopped working years ago. Then you should have left, honestly, instead of sneaking around and making me look like a fool in front of the whole town. What do you want from me? You want me to apologize? Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I fell in love with someone else. I'm sorry our marriage isn't what it used to be. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I gathered up the papers and photos, stacking them neatly. I want you to understand something, Leah. This isn't just about our marriage anymore. This is about respect, about honesty, about the example we set for our daughter. What are you going to do? I'm going to give you a choice. You can end the affair, we can try counseling, and maybe we can salvage something from this mess. Or you can continue down this path, and I'll make sure everyone in Cedar Bluff knows exactly what kind of woman you really are. Her tears stopped flowing. The vulnerable woman disappeared, replaced by the lawyer who'd learned to fight dirty in small-town courtrooms. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you an opportunity to do the right thing. And if I don't? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then you'll find out that your predictable, unsophisticated husband has learned a few new tricks. She stood up, her jaw set with determination. Tom, if you think you can intimidate me into staying in a marriage I don't want, you're wrong. I'm not the same woman you married 22 years ago. No, you're not. That woman had integrity. The slap came fast, cracking across my cheek with enough force to snap my head sideways. For a moment, we both stood frozen, shocked by the violence of it. Don't you dare judge me, she hissed. You have no idea what I've sacrificed for this family, what I've given up to play the role of the perfect wife. I touched my cheek, feeling the heat of her handprint. And now I know what I've sacrificed to play the role of the perfect fool. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I'm staying at Cassie's tonight. We'll figure out the details later. Give my regards to Eli. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. I stood alone in my kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of my wife's betrayal, and realized that 22 years of marriage had just ended with a slap and a lie about staying at Cassie's house. Because I knew exactly where she was going, and it wasn't to her best friend's place. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Ray's number. Time to make some calls and set the next phase of my plan in motion. The gloves were officially off. Monday morning dawned clear and cold, the kind of October day that made Cedar Bluff look almost picturesque if you ignored the rust stains and broken dreams. I'd slept better than I had in months, which probably said something disturbing about my mental state. Madison came downstairs for breakfast, wearing her usual teenage armor of resentment and entitlement. "Where's Mom?" "She stayed at Cassie's last night. We had a disagreement." "About what?" I poured myself coffee and studied my daughter's face. She was old enough to know the truth, but young enough to be devastated by it. The decision of how much to tell her felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. "About the future of our marriage." "Are you guys getting divorced?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Madison's voice carried a mixture of fear and something else, anticipation maybe, like part of her wanted the uncertainty to end, even if the ending wasn't happy. "I don't know yet, kiddo. That depends on your mother. She says you've been acting paranoid, going through her stuff, checking up on her." "What else does she say?" Madison shifted uncomfortably. "That you're threatened by her success, that you want to keep her trapped in some 1950s housewife role." The manipulation was masterful. Leah had been preparing Madison for this conversation, feeding her a narrative that painted me as the villain and her as the victim of an oppressive marriage. "And what do you think?" "I think you're both being stupid. Can't you just work it out like normal parents?" "Sometimes things break beyond repair, Madison. Sometimes the best thing you can do is admit it and move on." She grabbed a granola bar and her backpack. "Whatever. I'm staying at Emma's house after school. I don't want to be here when you guys have your big fight." After she left, I called in sick to work and drove to downtown Cedar Bluff. The law office where Leah worked occupied the second floor of a restored Victorian building, all polished wood and brass nameplate respectability. I parked across the street and waited. At 9:15, Eli's BMW pulled into the parking lot behind the building. 5 minutes later, Leah's Honda followed. They'd driven separately, maintaining the illusion of propriety, but I'd seen enough to know they'd spent the night together. My phone buzzed. A text from Cassie. "Hope you and Leah work things out. She really loves you, you know." I texted back, "Thanks for letting her stay over. She needed a friend last night." "Of course! That's what friends are for." The lies were so casual, so automatic, that I wondered if any of them even remembered what the truth looked like anymore. I drove to Rudy's gym and spent an hour working out my frustration on the heavy bag. The old man watched me with knowing eyes, saying nothing until I'd exhausted myself. "Feel better?" "Getting there." "You ready for the next round?" "More than ready." That afternoon, I made 3 phone calls that would change everything. The first was to Bill Henderson, president of the Cedar Bluff Chamber of Commerce and Leah's boss's biggest client. Bill and I had worked together on several construction projects, and he respected my work ethic and integrity. "Bill, I need to ask you something, and I need you to keep it confidential for now." "What's on your mind, Tom?" "How important is character to your organization? Personal integrity, professional ethics, that sort of thing?" "It's everything. Why?" "I may have some information that could affect your relationship with Morrison, Klein, and Associates. Information about one of their employees that reflects poorly on the firm's judgment." "What kind of information?" "The kind that involves extramarital affairs and ethical violations. I'll have documentation by the end of the week." "Jesus, Tom, this is serious stuff." "I know. That's why I wanted to give you a heads up. Your organization's reputation matters, and you deserve to know what kind of people you're associating with." The second call was to Janet Morrison, senior partner at Leah's firm, and a woman who'd built her reputation on old-fashioned values and professional standards. "Mrs. Morrison, this is Tom Bradley, Leah's husband. I wonder if I could schedule a meeting with you this week." "Of course, Tom. Is everything all right?" "I have some concerns about workplace conduct that I think you need to be aware of. It involves 2 of your employees and could potentially create liability issues for the firm." "That sounds serious. Can you come in Wednesday morning?" "I'll be there." The third call was to my old friend Mike Chen, who worked for the local newspaper. Mike and I had gone to high school together and he'd covered several of my company's community service projects over the years. Tom, good to hear from you. What's up? Mike, I might have a story for you. Local interest, involves some prominent people in the legal community. I'm listening. It's about professional ethics, personal conduct, and the kind of behavior that undermines public trust in our institutions. Sounds intriguing. When can we talk? End of the week. I want to make sure I have all my facts straight first. By 5 o'clock, I'd set 3 different traps, each designed to destroy a different aspect of Leah and Eli's comfortable little world. Their professional reputations, their social standing, and their future prospects were all about to become casualties in a war they'd started but didn't know how to finish. I drove home and found Madison in the kitchen, making herself a sandwich. How was school? Fine, Mom called. She's working late tonight. I'm sure she is. Dad, are you okay? You seem different today. Calmer, I guess. I ruffled her hair, remembering when she used to climb on my lap and ask me to read her stories about princesses and dragons. I'm figuring some things out, kiddo. It's going to be okay. Promise? I promise. That night, I sat in my garage with a beer and my laptop, preparing for the final phase of my campaign. Tomorrow, I'd start making my case to the people who mattered in Cedar Bluff. By the end of the week, everyone would know exactly what Leah and Eli had been doing behind closed doors. They wanted sophistication? I'd show them what small-town justice looked like. They thought I was predictable? They were about to learn how wrong they were. The war was just beginning, and I intended to win it. Wednesday morning arrived with the crisp promise of autumn and the weight of impending confrontation. I dressed carefully, my best suit, the one I wore to funerals and court appearances, pressed and ready for battle. The meeting with Janet Morrison was scheduled for 10 o'clock. I arrived 15 minutes early and sat in the reception area, surrounded by law books and diplomas that represented everything Leah thought I could never understand. Mr. Bradley, Mrs. Morrison will see you now. Janet Morrison's office was a monument to legal achievement, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, framed awards, and a massive oak desk that had probably witnessed 1,000 difficult conversations. She gestured to a leather chair across from her desk. Tom, I appreciate you coming in. Leah speaks very highly of you. That's interesting, considering what I'm here to discuss. I opened my briefcase and removed a folder containing printed emails, photographs, and a detailed timeline of Leah and Eli's affair. Mrs. Morrison, I'm here because I believe you have a right to know what 2 of your employees have been doing on company time and how it might affect your firm's reputation. Her expression grew serious as she examined the evidence. The emails were damning. Discussions of meeting times during work hours, use of company resources for personal communication, and references to client information being shared inappropriately. This is very troubling, Tom. If these allegations are accurate, we're looking at serious ethical violations. I can provide additional documentation if needed: phone records, credit card statements, witness testimony. That won't be necessary. This is sufficient to warrant immediate action. She closed the folder and looked at me with something approaching sympathy. Tom, I'm sorry you're going through this. Leah is a talented attorney, but this behavior is completely unacceptable. What happens now? I'll need to conduct a formal investigation, but based on what you've shown me, I don't see how either of them can remain with the firm. We simply can't tolerate this kind of conduct. I stood to leave, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Mrs. Morrison, I want you to know this isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. I understand. And Tom, you did the right thing bringing this to my attention. From the law office, I drove directly to the Chamber of Commerce meeting. Bill Henderson had arranged for me to address the executive committee about ethical concerns in the local legal community. The conference room was filled with Cedar Bluff's business elite, bank presidents, shop owners, and civic leaders who formed the backbone of our small town's economy. Gentlemen, ladies, thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm here because I believe this community deserves better than what we've been getting from some of our professional service providers. I laid out the case methodically, presenting evidence of the affair and its impact on professional conduct. I showed them how client confidentiality had been compromised, how company resources had been misused, and how the reputation of Morrison, Klein, and Associates had been tarnished by the actions of two employees who thought they were above accountability. The question before us is simple, I concluded. Do we continue to support businesses that tolerate this kind of behavior, or do we demand better from the people we trust with our legal affairs? The room buzzed with whispered conversations. Cedar Bluff was a small town where reputation mattered, and what I'd just revealed would spread through the community like wildfire. Bill Henderson stood up. Tom, on behalf of the chamber, I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention. We'll be reviewing our relationship with Morrison, Klein, and Associates immediately. By noon, my phone was ringing constantly. Word was spreading through Cedar Bluff's gossip network faster than I'd anticipated. I let most calls go to voicemail, but when Ray called, I answered. Tommy, what the hell is going on? I'm hearing crazy stories about Leah and some lawyer. Not stories, Ray. Facts. Jesus Christ. Are you okay? I'm better than I've been in months. What can I do? Nothing. This is something I need to handle myself. That evening, I was working in my garage when Leah's car pulled into the driveway. She stormed through the door like a hurricane, her face flushed with anger and humiliation. You bastard! How could you do this to me? I didn't look up from the engine I was rebuilding. Do what? You know exactly what. Janet fired me today. Eli too. We're both finished in this town thanks to you. That's unfortunate. Maybe you should have thought about consequences before you started screwing around. This isn't just about me, Tom. This affects Madison too. How is she supposed to hold her head up in school when everyone knows her parents' business? Now I looked at her. Really looked at her. The polished professional veneer was gone, replaced by raw desperation and fury. Madison will be fine. Kids are resilient. She'll learn that actions have consequences and that integrity matters more than convenience. You've destroyed everything. My career, my reputation, my future. No, Leah. You destroyed those things when you decided to betray your marriage vows and professional ethics. I just made sure people knew about it. She collapsed into the folding chair I kept in the garage, her anger giving way to something that looked like grief. What do you want from me, Tom? You want me to beg? To grovel? To pretend I can love you the way I used to? I want you to understand that choices have consequences. You chose to have an affair. You chose to lie to our daughter. You chose to prepare divorce papers behind my back. Those were your decisions, and now you get to live with the results. And what about your choices? What about the choice to humiliate me publicly instead of handling this privately? You lost the right to privacy when you made our marriage a public joke. She stood up, her composure returning like armor sliding back into place. Fine. You win, Tom. You've gotten your revenge. But don't think this is over. I'll find another job in another town if I have to. And when I do, I'm taking Madison with me. No, you're not. Watch me. Leah, you're unemployed, your reputation is ruined, and you have no money of your own. What judge is going to give you custody under those circumstances? The truth of it hit her like a physical blow. She'd burned every bridge, destroyed every advantage, and left herself with nothing but the clothes on her back and a boyfriend who was probably already looking for an exit strategy. You planned this, she whispered. All of it. You manipulated me into destroying myself. I gave you choices at every step. You could have ended the affair. You could have tried counseling. You could have been honest with Madison. Instead, you chose to keep lying, keep cheating, and keep treating me like I was too stupid to figure it out. She walked to the door, then turned back one last time. I hope you're proud of yourself, Tom. I hope destroying my life was worth it. I didn't destroy your life, Leah. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already destroyed. After she left, I sat alone in my garage, surrounded by tools and half-finished projects, and realized that for the first time in years, I felt like myself again. The man who'd built a business from nothing, who'd raised a daughter, who'd tried to build something lasting in a world that seemed determined to tear everything down. Tomorrow, I'd start rebuilding. Tonight, I'd just sit with the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys actually win, even when they have to become the villain to do it.